podcasting has a lot of different avenues, and like you, I started with video only. There's just a huge opportunity and there's far less competition. And it's not about like not having high standards. It's just like, look, how many millions of people do you want to compete with, or do you want to compete with a couple 100,000? Like,
wow.
The answer is it's up to you. If your focus at the outset is how can I monetize, then you won't monetize. And the reason is because you're going to make content that serves that purpose only and not the content that listeners need. And the content listeners need is something you need to determine well in advance. Okay, like what problem are you solving with the podcast? It's just like a business. It's just like a job. Like what problem are you solving? So you got to have a listener promise. Like what is my promise to the listener? Like if Trevor was to listen today to my next show, like what can he expect to get out of it on a regular basis? If I'm thinking about money, it's going to be a little bit different, man. Like it's going to be probably scripted. It's probably not going to be chill like this, like how we feel right now.
Welcome to the Who You Know Job Networking Show, where what you know is important, but who you know can make all the difference in your business, career, relationships, and your life. I'm super excited. Today I'm here with Rich Cardona.
What is up, my friend?
Man, this is legit. I've been waiting for this moment. So, Rich, I want to just kind of introduce you real quick. You are a podcasting guru for executives and business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs. Yes. You're helping people crush it out there with podcasting. So, you know, we're in here, we're doing a little bit of podcasting today.
Yes.
And I'm gonna need your help, man. I need you to help 10x this thing. You know what I'm saying?
We can and we will, man. I know. I always like to say there's low hanging fruit on every single podcast there is, man. Like there's something that's just like, oh man, that little quarter turn is gonna just take it to the next level.
Well, as I was telling you in the lobby, so I first of all, I just want to say I appreciate you because we're in the lobby. I bump into you, and the first thing he's like, "How can I serve you? How can I help you?" He's trying to connect me. Can I make any connections? Like he's just giving, and I just love that because that's the spirit of what we teach too.
I know.
You know what I mean?
That's game recognized game, man. That's how you roll. So it's like, how could I not be the same, right?
Well, I just appreciate it, you know, and so he was giving me some tips, and I was telling him a little bit about our podcast journey and how messed up it was, just because how we started our podcast, we were going so focused with video, right, that we weren't paying attention to the back end. Yeah. The show notes, the titles, the thumbnails, the timestamps, and all that stuff. So talk to me about how did you get involved in all of this?
So I'm video first too.
Okay.
So I think the last time we spoke, I was primarily doing LinkedIn strategy for executives and personal branding, and I still do that. But that kind of bled over into like everything I do is based off my own experience because you have to be acutely familiar with the problem you're solving in order to help other people solve it, right?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, let me. My podcast started doing really well, and then I had another podcast that just really, really blew up, and I'm like, how can I help other people do this?
That was the crypto one, right?
Yeah, NFTs for newbies that we did.
NFTs for newbies.
100,000 in 100 days, and then we did 1 million in less than 8 months. I mean, it was crazy. So that's kind of where I pivoted. But to answer your question, as far as like getting into it, it's just like podcasting has a lot of different avenues. And like you, I started with video only, but what I'm going to talk about once I go inside is there's just a huge opportunity and there's far less competition. And it's not about like not having high standards. It's just like, look, how many millions of people do you want to compete with, or do you want to compete with a couple 100,000? Like, wow. The answer is it's up to you.
So, okay, so I love what you're saying here. You're telling the audience that the competition's that's actually low. And you hear all these things people talk about podcasting, and they're like, oh, well, there's like 4 million podcasts and blah, 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 blah. But you're saying that's low competition.
Listen, this is going to blow your mind. There's apparently 4 million podcasts that exist.
Right. But how many are active?
Active, a podcast that has more than 10 episodes and has posted once in the last month. That number is 300,000.
Oh, dang. What an opportunity.
Yeah, so, like, now, you know how many active people are on Instagram right now? 1.38 billion.
Wow.
Even if 0.38 billion of those are bots, it's still a lot.
Right.
And you're not going to rank on Instagram. You can rank on a podcast real easy. So here's the other thing. That's 300,000. That number is cut in half by people who've published in the last week. So if you are publishing once a week and you have more than 10 episodes, you're really only competing with 150,000 people.
Wow.
Now, like,
that's huge when you think about, like, okay, so how many YouTube channels are there, right?
38 million.
38 million.
Active. Yeah. There's probably a lot in the desert, in the graveyard like mine, but
Wow. So do you think they're going to do anything about, like, scrubbing that up? Or, I mean, okay, let's say you did had an old podcast. Is it even discoverable?
yes, if as long as you didn't delete it from like Podcast Connect or something like that. So
Okay.
like it'll always exist, which is another reason why it's good, man. Like everyone's always talking about documenting the journey. Let's say you started a podcast in 2017, but now in 2022 or 2023 you're exploding. You could be like, by the way, I want you to go check out how this all started.
Love that. Hold on, I'm gonna give you a mic drop for that. And here's why. So let me tell you. So just the other day, this year's been a rough year for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 2022 has actually been a decline year, which I'm not used to, and it's actually, I'm used to winning and like trophies and just being crushing it and all of that. And this year I'm not. I'm losing. I'm like, oh, this sucks. I lost employees, all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, this sucks. But I did an episode about it, right? You know, and I'm like, yeah, I want to document the journey too. And also I went through and it was helping myself give myself practical tips to get out of the funk.
Yes.
Because you can get in the funk.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what, you know, if I'm teaching somebody how to get out of the funk, what would I do? And it actually helped me to get out of the funk.
Yes.
So anyway, it was just a great experience. And I think 5 years from now, I'll go watch that episode or listen to that episode and be like, you know, it's gold.
Super smart. I mean, anytime you're about to have a breakdown, that just means you're on the precipice of a breakthrough.
Ooh, hold up. That's another mic drop.
And I feel you, man. Like, and I think what you said is super important, whether it's, you know, work or whether it's video content or podcasting, any of the above. If you look at it and you say to yourself, if this was my cousin, what advice would I give him or her?
Absolutely.
Because you got to get out of your own stuff, right? Like, what would I tell them? Because you're probably not acting on the advice you would give them,
right?
And you need to have that moment where you're like, well, this is what I would tell them, and I'm not even doing it.
Absolutely, I do that all the time. It's like, you know what? Preaching to yourself. Like, I'm always like, man, this is more for me than it is for the audience. Like, how? Like, I need to get out of this funk. So. You know, but what would I do? And it's a good position to be in a teacher position, and it'll help you get out as well. Okay, so talk to me about, you're like a freaking expert at this. You're blowing up some huge podcasts. You want to do any name dropping? No, you can't. You got an NDA going. You got an NDA. Okay, yeah. So for those of you that are listening right now, you don't know, he's blowing up some big time folks out there. Okay.
I will tell you this though, man. I reached out to Mr. Beast the other day.
Okay.
And I was just like, because one of the podcasts that I can't name was like number 100 in the world of podcasts, like all podcasts, and number 2 in entrepreneurship and number 8 in business. And I'm like, I'm just going to write Mr. Beast because I saw him talking about, you know, podcasting, number 1 YouTuber in the world. So I'm like, hit up his manager and I'm manifesting right now live. I just wrote him like, you could also be the number 1 podcaster in the world.
Wow.
Holler at me.
Holla at your boy.
And he's in North Carolina. I live in North Carolina. You know what I'm saying? And he said in this episode that I watched him on, like, he doesn't like to leave a lot. So I'm like, I will, man, this is like my specialty, man. Like, I will get in front at least to just be like, hey, here's what I could do.
Well, you're a networking guru too. And I love how you say it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
100%.
Right? Well, that's so true. I mean, the name of our show is Who You Know, but it goes in this order. It's who knows you. Then it's who you know. Yeah. Then it's what you know.
Yep.
Right? It goes in that order. And so I think you're going to do it, man. I'm excited to hear
we'll
you.
See.
You're going to do it, man. You're going to do it. Well, let's talk a little bit about cash flow because we always like to talk a little bit about cash flow around here. So podcasting, what's the opportunity here?
There's a lot, man. And here's what I would say. And this is the advice no one wants to hear, is that if your focus at the outset is how can I monetize, then you won't monetize.
Okay.
And the reason is because you're going to make content that serves that purpose only and not the content that listeners need. And the content listeners need is something you need to determine well in advance. Okay, like what problem are you solving with the podcast? It's just like a business. It's just like a job. Like what problem are you solving? So you gotta have a listener promise. Like, what is my promise to the listener? Like, if Trevor was to listen today to my next show, like, what can he expect to get out of it on a regular basis? If I'm thinking about money, it's gonna be a little bit different, man. Like, it's gonna be probably scripted. It's probably not gonna be chill like this, like how we feel right now. But when you get to a place where you could monetize, there's a few ways. One, you could literally monetize from just having a podcast. You and I talked about Anchor a little bit earlier. Like Anchor pays you, and there's people who make plenty of good money. Probably not like I could survive on that money, but good money off that. Sponsorships, of course, meaning who you know could be a sponsor of the Rich Cardona show, and you guys give me XK a month, and I read a host-read ad, or you read an ad on my show in the middle of the ad. By the way, this is a tip for everyone. Don't put your call to action at the end of a podcast, because no one usually makes it all the way through. Put it in the middle when they're most engaged, okay? You got to put it in the middle. But anyway, so yeah, you could be like, hey, Rich, we're going to give you $5K a month to do to just read one read in the middle of your episode, every episode. Okay, we could do that. Your email list. Think about your email list. Like, if you have an email list, that's the people who buy from you the most are the people who are already customers, right? So that's like the real name of the game. It's always harder to get someone cold to warm to hot. So can you build your email list and then drop in your offer, once every quarter when you have something? You could do that. Patreon, you could do crowdfunded supported things. So there's a lot of different ways you could monetize in that regard, and then affiliate marketing.
I went to the podcast movement.
Here
in Dallas.
Great
Did you
conference.
go to that?
No, I went last year though.
Man, it blew me away. I got overwhelmed.
Oh, I know,
bro. There was so much. It was 3 floors of just.
It's insanity.
Everything. I mean, there was probably 20, 30 different classes going on at any time.
I know.
They had a map like Disneyland, and you're like, okay, what do I want to learn? And it was like at 9:00, there's 10 classes going on. Mm-hmm. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But it was awesome, and I got a little bit overwhelmed. But there were so many different ways you could monetize. I was blown away by that.
It's very possible, and I mean, like here's the one myth about podcasting is you don't need like millions of downloads a month to monetize. Like, and I'm gonna just share a quick story. Half of my team right now is in the Philippines. They're international and they're full time. And I actually went to go see them last week. And I'm still recovering from the jet lag on that one because they're 12 hours ahead. But the way that team even started was through one person who I had, and her name is Ellie. And Ellie, I got through a VA staffing agency here based out of Dallas. Okay, well, I eventually bought her out of that contract so then I could pay her straight up and I could pay her a little bit more so they don't get the cut. Well, what happened was before that, I just had them sponsor the show because who could talk about the importance of a virtual assistant better than me? Right? And like, even if it was just 5,000 downloads an episode, doesn't matter, man. If I had Gary Vee on here and there or whatever, I'm like, hey guys, like this is my lineup. Here's who I got. Here's what I'm going to say about VA staffing. And here's why I'm going to mention your name and tell them to get in touch with you. And of course they did. So even if they're paying me $5,000 a month to sponsor the episode, I know the lifetime value of someone that does business with them is over 20 grand. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, and I wasn't getting millions of downloads, man. I'm telling you, I was getting like 5,000 downloads an episode. Wow. So it's like, it was a perfect fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
A very specific audience.
Specific audience, niche, right? Like with this show, we've had sponsors reach out for different products that in the job search, category. Like there's different tech products that are trying to solve the hiring issue and the talent issues that are going on right now. And so I've had some of those reach out, and we don't have a ginormous, audience like on the podcast.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but it's niche.
Yes.
It's focused.
You don't need a big audience. You just need a specific audience.
A specific audience. And if you get both, a specific and a big audience, now you're talking about some big time cash flow.
Here's a hack. I don't want to forget this. The hack is my show, my Leadership Locker is one of my podcasts. And it initially started out for veterans who wanted to start businesses. So I would say, this is how I got some of the big names. I'm like, I want to make sure you're in front of a military audience because you don't have those yet. And they'd be like, okay. You know what I'm saying? And eventually it evolved, and it's not just military audience, it's small business owners, but it worked, man. So,
well, they say the riches are in the niches.
Yes.
Right? The riches are in the
100%.
niches. And I'm even thinking with our show, we need to niche it down just even a little bit more because, job search is kind of wide. Yep. I really feel like we serve, senior level executives, helping those folks who are dealing with ageism get back to work. And so that's what we really focus on. But it's really also the mindset of what it takes to get through. It's a big obstacle, and you get a lot of rejection, and you feel hopeless and worthless and all that stuff. And so it's all about the mindset, and that's why I told you, motivational speakers. Yep. People that can really lift up my audience because they're feeling like crap. and they tune in, I need to lift them up. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So anyways, but tell the audience, where is the best way to connect with you? Maybe if they have been thinking about starting a podcast, or maybe they have a podcast like mine that needs a little remix.
Yeah.
Where should they connect with you?
I'm trying to really get better about Insta. So at Rich Cardona _ you'll see me there. Send me a DM, and if you heard of me through Trevor, definitely let me know, because I want to make sure I acknowledge that and repost that and all that good stuff. LinkedIn, of course, is where I'm primarily at. Rich Cardona there, and we have a site, and we're adjusting it, but it's called podcastlaunch.io. And like you said, I think we actually do better, and I'm not knocking our own work, but I think we do better with existing podcasts, because the beginning is just crazy. People get so caught. I'm telling you, man, like, people will get caught up and delay for weeks over cover art. I'm like,
just get it.
Doesn't matter, man. Like, you could change that anytime you want. You know you know what you can't change? How bad your content is if you don't start. You know what I mean? So.
That's good right there. Just get started, man. So you guys heard it here. Make sure you go connect with Rich Cardona over there on LinkedIn, Instagram. You have a website or anything they go to?
Yeah, podcastlaunch.io.
Podcastlaunch.io. Guys, that's the show. It's all about who you know. Thanks for listening to the Who You Know Show podcast. My name is Trevor Houston, and if you've enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing wherever you listen and leave us a positive review to help us keep the mics on in the studio. Until next week, that's the show. It's all about who you know.